So, you just finished a book, or perhaps even a series of books, and you find yourself wondering, what should I read next? This question is a very common question that happens to a lot of people when they finish a book or a series, and they're left with a feeling of emptiness. Don't worry, that is totally normal. And I'm here to point you in the direction of a fantasy series, an epic high fantasy series known as The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. Now, this series is very popular in the fantasy space. Some of you might have heard of it but been turned away from it because of its size, and others, maybe you're newer to the fantasy space, might have never heard of it until right now. I'm here to tell you that this series is well worth your time. The Wheel of Time is 14 books long, it's 11,898 pages, and over 4.4 million words in total. Now, these numbers may seem huge at first, but trust me, once you start reading it, you will be very glad that this series is this long, because you're just going to wish it kept going forever and ever and ever. That's how good this series is. Now, to many people, what's most important about a fantasy book is the world building, or the characters, or an excellent plot. And while these are all important aspects to a fantasy series, and all something that the Wheel of Time does very well, what it does best, and what in my opinion is the most important aspect of a fantasy series, is that the Wheel of Time is very entertaining. In fact, it's so entertaining that I can think of many occasions when after a long day, instead of going to the TV and watching a new movie or TV show and eating some ice cream, which is something that I love to do and I know many other people do as well, instead I would go and pick up the Wheel of Time, because it is just that entertaining. I would rather sit and read chapter upon chapter and hour after hour of a book in the Wheel of Time series than any movie I could think of. And that is, in my opinion, the highest praise you can give a book. Another reason to read it is that it is an inspiration for much of the modern fantasy. For example, look at famous author Brandon Sanderson and his Cosmere. Brandon Sanderson, as a matter of fact, actually finished the last 3 books of the series because Robert Jordan passed away. So if it wasn't clear that he's a huge fan of the series, all you need to do is read the Cosmere and realize just how much Brandon Sanderson was inspired by and drew from the Wheel of Time in his stories. Another example is Stephen Erickson in Mal's Book of the Fallen. That series also very heavily influenced by the Wheel of Time. So if you're someone who has read those series and loved them and is looking for something similar, look no further than Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time. And if you're someone who hasn't read those series but wants to get more into fantasy, well, then a great starting point is the Wheel of Time, because then you can have a firm foundation to build upon and see and appreciate the influence of the Wheel of Time in many works of modern fantasy. Now, another important aspect of the Wheel of Time is that it is familiar, but at the same time new, unique, and exciting. It is a little bit It does have many common fantasy tropes and themes, but these tropes are done differently, uniquely, and the themes fit the plot of the story very well. And it allows you to feel like you know what's going to happen and have a sense of familiarity with the characters and the world, so you're not lost immediately when you step into this world, because it is massive, but luckily it is familiar to a certain degree. But then Robert Jordan takes all these things that you think are familiar and you think are going to happen, and he twists them, and he puts these exciting turns and twists into his story that keeps you on the edge of your seat the whole time, keeps the pages turning, and just keeps you wanting more and more and more. And it's something that he does unlike almost any other author I've read. Importantly, the Wheel of Time has a core cast of characters. Now, because there are 14 books, this core cast is very large and keeps growing even by books 9, 10, 11, so on and so forth. But these characters are so well developed, you feel like you know every single one of them as if they were a true friend. And you feel each character, you feel their uniqueness and their difference. It's not simply like Robert Jordan just stuck a bunch of characters on the page, copy and pasted a couple things about them, and just changed their fonts a little bit. No, each character has their own background, has their own story, has their own desires, their own dreams, their own goals, and each character is different in that way, and they go about what they do differently. And it allows you to fall in love with certain characters, hate certain characters, and it just makes this story so character driven that they're all going about for this main goal, obviously, to defeat the darkness. But in the meantime, each character has their own different ways of getting there and their own sub goals that they focus on that allows each individual book to have its own unique storyline and feel very different from each other, and each character to truly feel like they are progressing and developing in this world, which is something Robert Jordan does very well. Another aspect of the story that I really like is that there are multiple different antagonists. There's obviously the main big bad, and then there are many of his henchmen, but each antagonist has their own level of darkness and complexity and morally gray decisions that they make, and they fall on this wide spectrum. It's not simply the good guys versus the bad guys. Sometimes the good guys are bad, sometimes they do bad things, sometimes they hurt other people, sometimes they hurt them with meaning to, sometimes they hurt them without meaning to, which allows you to really sympathize or perhaps despise some good characters. And then on the other side, you have the traditional antagonists that sometimes do good things, or sometimes you see that they're forced to do bad things even though they don't really want to, which allows you to sympathize with them, or perhaps they are just truly evil and then you despise them like you were traditionally meant to do. But it allows for all these different antagonists to come together and make this story feel truly alive and different. Another thing that Robert Jordan does very well, perhaps better than almost anyone else, is his world building. The world in this story is so alive and rich and full of detail. It's almost, I would say it's better than any other fantasy book. I'm just going to throw that out there. I think that Robert Jordan has the best world building, the most detailed world building. And at times, yes, those details can maybe be a little bit much. But I find myself going back to the detail and being really appreciative of the amount of time he spent describing the world, because it feels like you're really in it. It feels truly alive. The world is constantly changing in the background of the main plot. Something's happening in one place. Well, guess what? Many other things are happening in these other places as well. And it allows for the world to feel dynamic and ever changing. And it's just truly something to behold. Robert Jordan writes each culture and each city and each place so differently and so uniquely, but they all come together and work very well and mesh to create ultimately the Wheel of Time and the story that I love and I want to share with you. Building off of that, because his world is so detailed and developed, Robert Jordan's magic system is actually both a hard and a soft magic system, and they work separately but together to create this cohesive unit that works really well, and I honestly think couldn't be pulled off in any other story besides The Wheel of Time, because of just how detailed it is. Each character uses their respective side of power, and sometimes some characters use both. But guess what? There are checks and balances to each side and each magic system that allows no one character to become too overpowered in either or both systems, and allows for each system to have these drawbacks, but at the same time, these great benefits that our characters can use on both the good and the bad side to massive effect, whether positive or negative. And lastly, the final reason why I think you should read The Wheel of Time is actually something that I find doesn't get mentioned enough, and that is the underrated political intrigue in this story. There is so much happening politically behind the scenes and even on the page that keeps you turning and keeps each book interesting. Because if it were just the main good versus evil plot for 14 books, That would get a little tiring, but thankfully, Robert Jordan deftly uses politics and political intrigue and infighting amongst the light versus the dark, or even amongst the light themselves, and especially amongst the dark, to keep things very, very unique and keep you as the reader on the edge of your seat, wondering what's going to happen next in each subplot and guessing about the schemes and considering who will win and who will come out victorious politically, not just at the end. Now, to address just a couple key issues you might have heard of or you might hear if you watch other videos about the Wheel of Time. The first being what's known as the slog, which refers to books 7 through 10 of the series. Many people consider the slog to be where the series slows down drastically and becomes a drag to get through and nothing ever really happens. And while I can understand for maybe those who read it when it was first came out, some of these stories are slower and having to wait months and maybe even years to read the next book just to have it be slower paced and feel like not as much is happening could have been detrimental. Now, with all the books having been finished and us as the readers being able to just binge through them, I don't have much of an issue with the slog. Yes, it slows down. Yes, it's not quite as action packed as some of his other books, but you're still with these characters that you've come to love and enjoy and sometimes hate. You love to hate them, hate to love them kind of thing. And each character gets developed, the world gets developed, there's intrigue, and frankly, there is still plenty of action in these books. Some of my favorite action actually comes during the slog, or what's considered the slog. So if that's a reason that's putting you off from this book, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I would keep going with the series. I would start with the series and not worry about the slog. Um, another common complaint some people have is that Jordan, in his descriptions of characters and the world and what they're wearing, can be a bit long winded. And while this is true, I think it adds to the world building because he's not being repetitive. Each character, when he describes what they're doing and what they're wearing, while they are similar descriptions, because that character in that culture wears wears that dress or that shirt or those pants all the time. And Robert Jordan wants you to pick up on that as the reader. He wants you to recognize that, and he wants you to see the differences between those characters and see exactly what that character does in a certain situation so that you can come to know that character even more and know that culture even more. And lastly, what some people say is that Robert Jordan and the Wheel of Time can be a bit Tolkien derivative, meaning that a lot of it is like the Lord of the Rings. And those people, in my opinion, never made it past book 2 or 3 of the series before they stopped. I wouldn't worry about that whatsoever because Robert Jordan very quickly goes on in a very different direction, not a very good direction, and a very unique direction, and something that you are going to love to read. So if you're not picking this up because you think, oh, it's just another Lord of the Rings, it's not. It's a little bit similar in the beginning, and that allows it to get its legs and allows you to become familiar with this series so that you don't feel lost in Robert Jordan's massive world full of many different characters and cultures. But it goes off on a very different story and a wonderful story that I would be ashamed if you missed because of that. So ultimately, I hope that you pick up The Wheel of Time. It is a 14-book adventure unlike any other. You are going to laugh and cry and love and hate certain characters. You're going to laugh with them and cry with them. There's just so much emotion throughout this book, throughout this series, that you absolutely must read. It is something that everyone should read before they die. I firmly believe that. It is truly, truly an epic masterpiece of fantasy. So I hope you pick it up because I know that once you do, you won't be able to put it down and you will forever be permanently changed. So if you like this review and you want to see more Wheel of Time content or more or other book related content, please like and subscribe.